in listen-only mode.
Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Guiding Parents in the Age of Overindulgence. My name is Erin Strong-Elliott, and I'm the Senior Director of Campus Engagement for the University of Minnesota Alumni Association. We've had nearly 200 alumni and friends register for this webinar, and I'm absolutely thrilled that so many of you are sharing your time with us today. Today's webinar is part of a new free series offered by the University of Minnesota Alumni Association, where we're having conversation with experts about career, life, and learning topics. The webinar is being recorded and will be viewable afterwards at minnesotaalumni.org/alumni webinar series. Just give us a few business days to post it on our website. We'll also be sending a reminder email. We're doing more in career life stage webinars between now and April, and those webinars will be posted as they occur for on-demand viewing off our website, so you can access them wherever you like, whenever you'd like. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's events. You've joined the presentation listening to your computer's speaker system by default. If you would prefer to listen over the telephone, just select telephone in the audio pane of your GoToWebinar panel, and dial information will be displayed. If you experience audio difficulties while listening via your computer speakers, this can be caused by having multiple software applications open, which can cause you to use up your computer's bandwidth and affect network performance. Feel free to close any unnecessary applications of your computer. Questions are welcome, and you may submit them at any time. We want this webinar today to be very interactive and hope we get to as many of your questions as possible. Please type in your questions in the questions pane on your GoToWebinar control panel. Thank you to my colleague Beth Beck, who is helping me to monitor the question stream today. Again, this webinar is being recorded and will be viewable afterwards at minnesotaalumni.org/alumni webinar series. Just give us a few business days to post it. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our featured presenters, Ellie McCann and Jean Isley-Clark. Ellie McCann is an extension educator and family relations and associate professor with the University of Minnesota Extension. She has a master's degree in human development and family studies. Ellie has been working with children and families for over 30 years through her work in both community agencies and university settings. Ellie has developed and taught numerous classes and trainings to professionals and parents, including Parents Forever Divorce Education Programming and Parents in the Age of Overindulgence, an online course. Ellie currently lives in Moorhead, Minnesota, and she is the parent of 3 daughters who are ages 22, 26, and 27. Jean Isley-Clark, PhD, is a longtime parent educator, member of the Overindulgent Research Studies team, and co-author of the book How Much is Too Much and other parenting books. The Overindulgent Research Studies look at many ways childhood overindulgence can impact adult lives. The findings may offer many ways to help adults recognize and deal with the overindulgent culture in which we are living. A University of Minnesota graduate, Jean lives in Plymouth, Minnesota with her husband, Dick, and watches her 5 granddaughters navigate growing up in a world of overindulgence. Ellie and Jean, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you. It's great to be here today.
Wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and launch your poll for you. All right, launch. Okay, so
in your experience, does overindulgence come up seldom, sometimes, or frequently?
Great, we'll just give it a couple more seconds here. All right, we'll close it and let's share the results. Okay, it looks like sometimes is 60%. Okay, Ellie, I'm turning it over to you. All right, let's see here. Ellie, can you hear me? Ellie, can you hit just to hit your screen? Accept that.
There's nothing to accept yet.
Okay, let's see here. Excuse me one second, everyone. Give us a minute. We're having just a few difficulties here. Let's see what I can do here. All right. Oops. Right. Huh. Oh, geez. Okay, let's see. All right. We should be back on track. Ellie, can you accept it now? There we go. Great.
Ellie, look at this. In your experience, does overindulgence come up seldom, sometimes, or frequently? This is 2015, and 94% of people said sometimes or frequently. When we started our research back in '95, those figures would have been in the opposite direction.
Really?
So people are much more aware of overindulgence than they used to be.
Absolutely.
And maybe there's more of it. We'll talk about that some more.
Right? So our road trip for today is really to learn about the overindulgence research that Jean has just referred to and take a walk through Parenting in the Age of Overindulgence, an online course for parents.
So we're going to talk about the research that's behind the overindulgence material that we're presenting. And in order to do that, I would like to, well, I not only would like to, but I'm just going to, without your permission.
All right.
Use your names, because this will be more fun for us to talk about if we think about the people who are part of the research. So when Connie Dawson and I published Growing Up Again in 1989, we had just a little bit about overindulgence, and people said, tell us more. And we couldn't tell anymore because we didn't know anymore. And you don't make up stuff like that.
Right.
You're professional.
Right.
And I'm professional. So there. And so with Dr. David Bredehoff, we started our research. And that then was reflected in the 1998 revision of Growing Up Again. And then people kept saying, well, what do we do about it? And Connie and I said, use the Growing Up Again book, because what you need to do to stop overindulgence and do strength parenting instead is presented in that book. And people said, but it doesn't say overindulgence. So we had to write a book that said overindulgence. So in 2004, when How Much Is Enough came out, we had 3 research studies. Now we have 10. So it was time to get this material out and available to you. And that's why the How Much is Too Much book came out just 1 year ago. Now, to talk about the research itself and give you some ideas of what we found, I'm going to pretend that you were part of it. And so in the very start of it, because we didn't know about it, and you do research in one of two ways. One way is you have a hypothesis. You have an idea here that you want to check out. So you go ahead and do research to see if your hypothesis is true or how much of it is true. We did the other kind, which is where you just plunge in to find out what you can find out. And the way we did that was with in-depth interviews. And so this is 1995, and we're going to pretend that Erin was in a workshop at an Adult Children of Alcoholics conference, and she was in a workshop on self-esteem. And at the end of that workshop, the lady who was running it, whom I happen to know very well, her name was Jean Clark, that person said, if there's anyone here who was overindulged as a child and you are willing to talk about it, will you contact me? And so in that conference that Erin attended, and I don't recall whether she was one of the people who contacted me, I think she wasn't. But people came to me, waited till everybody else was gone, and then said, could we go someplace private? So the first thing that I learned was that in 1995, if you had been overindulged, it was a secret. And I soon found out that that was because if you talked about having been overindulged, you were ridiculed, because overindulgence is having too much of something that looks good. And people would say, well, you were lucky. You know, I wish I'd had that. And so what I learned in those early depth interviews is that our research needed to focus on how, not only what childhood overindulgence is, what it looks like, how it's done, but also how it impacts adult life. So we made a questionnaire based on the interviews. And from those interviews, we got a definition of overindulgence. And every part of that definition came from someone in the interviewing saying, Jean, you put that in there. And I thought, okay, no. So the way that definition comes out, it is overindulging children is giving them too much of what looks good, too soon and for too long. It's giving them things or experiences that are not appropriate for their age or their interests or their talents. It's the process of giving things to a child to meet the adult's needs, not the child's. Overindulgence is giving a disproportionate amount of family resources to one or more children in a way that appears to be meeting the child's needs, but does not. So children experience scarcity in the midst of plenty. Overindulgence is doing or having so much of something that it does active harm, or at least prevents a person from developing and deprives that person of achieving his or her full potential. Overindulgence is a form of child neglect. It hinders children from mastering their needed developmental tasks and from learning necessary life lessons. And of course, it looks like, it doesn't look at all like neglect, because there's so much stuff. So 729 people were willing to take a questionnaire based on that research that we did, and Roger is one of the people who willingly took a 17-page questionnaire.
Wow.
And filled it out. And that was open-ended. And Roger might have been not indulged at all, or a little bit, or some, or a whole lot. So right away we started getting our continuum of responses. Not only was this 17 pages long, but it was open-ended, and people wrote and wrote and wrote. And so Jane was a student, I'm just pretending Jane, at Concordia in a graduate program working on research. And she was helping to code all of these responses. And what Dr. Bredehoff found was that the students weren't doing the coding. And so finally he said, okay, we all work every Tuesday afternoon. And they did, and he found out why they weren't doing it, and that it was too painful. Mm. He said no 10 or 15-minute period went by that somebody didn't come to him and say, Dr. B, look at this. So what we learned right away is that a whole lot of pain comes out of this. Now in 1998, Angela heard about the study one, and she learned about that and thought that it was interesting, and learned from that that there are 3 ways of overindulging, and there are many more things that we learned that Ellie will be presenting when she talks about the class that we've developed. And in 2004, Angela found the book, How Much Is Enough? And that's the one I mentioned that was based on the first 3 studies. And then in 2005, Concordia students engaged in a study, because in study 1, talk about a convenient sample. You know, we just walked around with an armload of those questionnaires. So we had people all over the map, people from age 18 to 80, and geographically all over. And Dave wanted to compare our outcomes to a more homogeneous community. So he did study 2 with Concordia students, and we got the same results. So what we did from there on was to go online and use other people's validated test instruments, because whether you mean to or not, when you set up your original research, you can slant it according to your frame of reference. And so from here on out, all of the studies are based on other people's instruments. And then we went back to study 1 and picked up item after item and looked at it. And so in 2005, Amy went on and participated in an online study, and she, along with 347 other people, looked at locus of control in parents, whether the parenting comes from internal values or from outside influences. And what we found was the more the child had been the more the adult had been overindulged, the more the parents had done their parenting in response to external influences. In 2006, Larry logged on to be part of a study, and that one looked at compared Baumrinn's parenting styles, and if you know about those, she created titles for 3 groups of parents that she observed, and called one group authoritarian, my way or the highway, another group authoritative, balancing structure with love, my words for it, and permissive, do whatever you like, honey. And of course, we authors assumed, without even knowing we were assuming it, that it would be the permissive parenting people who were overindulging. But what Larry found out when he read the results of the study is that authoritarian people were also frequently overindulging. And those are the my way or the highway. Isn't that interesting to think
Very
about?
interesting.
So I think it's kind of like maybe in this area, you've got to do it this way. But then and we're really tough here, so maybe we get really soft over here in some other area. Now Brian came on in 2006 to look at this study on relationships. And he was asked if his partner or spouse, how much they had been overindulged and how much he overindulges his children. And of course some people had done very, very little of it, and others a whole lot. And of those who had done a whole lot, we found that people who were highly overindulged tended to choose partners who also had been highly overindulged. Are we surprised? Well, of course not, because we look for people who seem real to us, and what's real to us is what we have experienced. That's later. Then we have in 2007, Concordia students again helped, and we developed a reliability and validity test with 14 items that measures, that you can use, we can use to measure how much you have been overindulged. And so that made it easier, because up until then we were having you tell us how much you thought you'd been overindulged. And then sometimes you came to us and said, oh, after I took the survey, I realized I'd been overindulged more than I thought I had. That's not uncommon. In 2007, Brian logged on and did the test where we looked at aspirations, life aspirations. I think in some ways this is the hardest study that we've done for me, because we looked at what people at what self-image they have and what they aspire to, and the more people who had been overindulged, the more they agreed that what they wanted out of life was wealth, fame, and image. And I've thought a lot about that, because I think wealth is fine. I'd like us all to have a bunch of it, you know, and I think if you want it, fame is just dandy. And to present a good image, I'm all for that. I like to look at people who are well-dressed and present themselves in a way that shows that they value themselves. But in the same study, what these highly overindulged people told us is that they are not interested in growth or learning. They're not interested in helping other people unless it directly helps them, not interested in contributing to the community, and not interested in making the world a better place. And so I spend time thinking, if there are a whole lot of these people, how's our workforce going to be? If we are overindulging a lot of children now, how's our workforce going to be in 15 years? How am I going to like having wealth, fame, and image people on my work team? It scares me a lot. Well, Michael came on in 2009 and participated in the research that looked at delayed gratification and subjective happiness, and told us, verified, that people who are overindulged generally tend to have a great difficulty delaying gratification. I want it, and I want it now, and it doesn't matter if it isn't convenient for you, and it doesn't matter if this isn't the right time to do it, because I want it.
And it's pretty hard to work with people.
Yeah, it is.
Who are at that level.
And then we also looked at subjective happiness and verified what we've been picking up earlier, which is it doesn't make kids happy when they're adults. We did not have adults saying, oh, I'm so glad they overindulged me. It's made my life so happy. What we got was, I resent it. So here we have parents who are overindulging because they want their kids to be happy. And it turns out that what they are apt to be is resentful. In 2011, we looked at who overindulges. And that's been a lot of fun for me because you can imagine I have asked hundreds or thousands of people who overindulges. And everybody pretty much knows. Well, I know it's because they didn't have what I didn't have things and I want them to have them. Or my parents couldn't afford it and I can. Or I wanted to do this and I couldn't. So my kid's going to hockey camp.
Right.
And one of the things that we came out with is a firm understanding that the reasons people overindulge are idiosyncratic to that person and that family. There are probably as many different reasons as there are people overindulging. But of the 42 that we recorded in the How Much is Too Much book, let me just read you a very few. I overindulge because I want to feel like I'm a good parent. Parents overindulge because they lack the skills to set limits. Those two are very different. Because it's the path of least resistance. I love Lori Canyer's quote when she said to me, remember, Jean, overindulgence is just a way to get through the day. And we all have to get through the day. The kids have to do what they have to do, which is figure us out and how to get from us what they want. And what we have to do is put gas in the car and food on the table and all that other stuff. Parents overindulge to compensate for an absent parent. In some cases, the overindulgence started as late as teenage, when someone in the family died or there was a divorce, or started sometime earlier when another child was born in the family with a disability. Compensating. To build the parent's own self-esteem. I want to be able to think about what a good parent I am. Well, doesn't your heart go out to these people? I mean, everybody wants to feel like a good parent, which is unfortunate because parenting, I don't think it's possible to be a good parent every single day.
Absolutely not.
We do the best we can day after day. Because of the influence of media programming and to make the child happy. So when you look at someone else who is overindulging, please don't assume that you know why. Then we looked at who is overindulging, and that was Michael who came in on that one, and found out, much to his chagrin, that fathers are the biggest offenders now. But mothers, don't get overly excited because you're only a point or two behind. And then studied in 2012, Erica participated in the study on helicopter parenting and entitlement, and found that helicopter parenting is one part of overindulgence, and Ellie will be talking about the 3 parts, and also found a very strong connection between parents who don't feel competent and who helicopter. And this is the only study in which we have approached anything about spiritual growth and found that the more people were overindulged, the less interested they were in that. And we didn't use a definition of spiritual growth. We just left that up to each person. So there we have that. And the impact of overindulgence is it's painful to the child, to the people around them. Children become demanding and unappreciative. children learn to lack everyday skills. And this comes, they told us, from the resentment about not having had chores. You have an overblown sense of entitlement, and this comes in a big degree from having things done for them that they should have done for themselves. And we pulled from that first study just 4 examples of statements that adults made. So I feel sad and angry when I don't get my way or don't get what I want. Or I often feel disappointed in others, let down by them. The more I give, the more I expect. Or I'm so far in debt I can't see the light of day. Or I'm overweight, discontent, overdue, fat, and still feel empty. And of those 4, that last one is the one that we came across in some form or another most often. So a way for you to learn more about the research, if you want to, is there's very nice 4 pages of a chart laid out in the back of the How Much Is Enough book that has much more information than I have given you. And then there's also a lot of information on the overindulgence.info website. And the thing that I want to take away, I want you to take away, is that I get it, that overindulgence comes from a good heart. When I started this research, I thought I wasn't going to like people who overindulged. Then I figured out I was doing it. So then I thought I had to find another approach. And I am really convinced that overindulgence comes from a good heart, and we're so surprised when we find out it has an outcome that we never intended. So just when we notice we're doing it, cut it back. And Ellie's going to help you look at some ways to think about doing that. Oh yeah, if you read the How Much Is Enough book, How Much Is Too Much is fully revised. It has 7 whole new chapters. And I had to have chapters on grandparents because some of our participants said, I'm a grandparent and the children are overindulging and I don't know what to do about it. And others said, I'm the parent and the grandparents are overindulging. So I hope there's some help in there. I had to do a lot of informal research on what grandparents are supposed to be doing these days because there isn't any consensus that I can find. So Ellie, give us some good stuff now.
All right, thanks, Jean. Parenting in the Age of Overindulgence, the course presents evidence-based research for parents through a new format using technology. The course was developed by myself and Jean and some of my colleagues, which was a very multidisciplinary team of extension educators in the Center for Family Development at the University of Minnesota to provide practical parenting tools and relatable situations to parents and influential adults. It can also be used by professionals as a tool or resource for those who do work directly with families. The goal of the team was to increase parents' self-awareness and to promote self-efficacy to be able to make the changes that they need to make to help reduce overindulgence in their own parenting. Some of the factors that influence the content and the presentation of the course were providing, as I said, an online source for overindulgence education for kind of a new and upcoming and more informed digital generation of parents. Also connecting with parents who are experiencing a diverse range of situations, such as children's ages, socioeconomical status, gender, culture, background, and a variety of other things. It also is addressing multiple learning styles and incorporates adult learning theory, throughout using video best practices for short, fast-paced, solution-based video clips, and to help ensure that participants are left with tools to help identify and address overindulgence that is happening in their own lives. So these are the course goals. I went through some of these, but to help identify what is overindulgence, to become aware of when overindulgence might be happening in their own life, and how can you as a parent address some of those overindulging situations that come up. So a little bit about how the course is organized, and it is a free 1-hour course for parents and professionals. And it was really organized first to talk about what is overindulgence. And then we go a little bit further into that and talk about the 3 different types, which I see that we have some questions here about, so I will talk about those 3 types in a little bit. And some tools for parents then, once they're able to identify overindulgence, what are some tools for parents to deal with it and manage it? After that overview, we also have some family scenarios. There are 3 different topics, including dressing, spending, eating, and 3 different age ranges that focus throughout those scenarios. So as Jean discussed, based on her research on overindulgence, we now know that there are 3 types of overindulgence. The first type is too much. Parents really not understanding the concept of enough stuff, okay? And I think that's probably one of the most easily recognizable forms because it's a very physical thing that you can see. Another form is over-nurturing, and this is a question we had about emotional. Does it come in an emotional form? Parents can also over-nurture by overdoing for their children, spoiling, giving them too much attention. I once knew a parent who, when I would have a conversation with him, if his child was talking to him, he would absolutely redirect his attention and start following the child around and leave me hanging. So that's an example of possibly too much attention. Doing things for children that they should be learning to do for themselves or already know how to do for themselves, and allowing children to think only about themselves and not about others. And also soft structure. And this really relates to the permissive parents that Jean was talking about in her research. When parents do not have rules or don't insist that rules be followed, or when parents shield children from the consequences of their behaviors and choices and don't follow through, for instance, and don't insist that they learn the life skills that are needed, or when parents fail to insist that children consider the impact of their actions on the family, the group, and society. That is really soft structure. The test of 4 is a parenting tool to help parents and children learn about what is enough. It helps guide children and adults towards personal responsibility and having some self-control. It encourages clear thinking and good decision making. So these are the 4 questions that are included in what we call the test of 4. Does it get in the way of the child learning a developmental task? And if so, which ones? Does it use a disappropriate amount of family resources? Is it more for the child, for the parent than the child? And does it harm others? Does it harm others, meaning others, property, the environment, the community? So this is a tool that parents can go through to really determine if the behavior or the situation signals overindulgence. So we're going to do a little activity with all of you using a scenario. And I'm going to talk about a 4-year-old that I know that asks every day to wear her kitty shirt. demands. I have to wear the kitty shirt, Mom. So let's back up and look at the test of 4. So the first question is development. Does it get in the way of the child learning a developmental task? And if so, which ones? If all the participants could think about that, and if you have an idea, please put it in the question box at this time. So it looks like we have a few that are saying no to question number 1, and we have some that are saying it may interfere with being flexible, learning how to be flexible, learning appropriate societal norms, learning limitations, also learning disappointment.
How to handle disappointment.
Right. What do you think, Jean?
I think what the test of 4 is, it helps me think. And I have to look at this child in this situation.
Should we go on to the next question?
Sure.
All right.
But thanks for all those responses.
So the next question is, does it use a disproportionate amount of family resources? It might be money, space, time, energy, focus of this child. If you can put your answers in the question box. Someone says laundry. Maybe easier to not have her screaming.
There we are, get through the day.
Yes, if the parent has to wash it every day. Energy. Oh my goodness, it takes a lot of energy. Depends on whether the parents are washing the shirt every night. A lot of people saying laundry. If the tantrum affects others in the household, stress of having that special shirt washed. So we've talked about this child before.
And no problem. All of these.
Right. Or if you purchase more than one kitty shirt. Do you have some thoughts about this?
Look at your family. Look at your family system. For one thing, this is not a matter of life and death.
Right.
You know, it's not a safety issue at all. And if I can keep my need as a parent out of the way of how I want her to look every single day, that's going to help me look at what's good for her.
And I think another thing we've talked about around this situation is teaching a child, what does a dirty shirt look like?
So, could be some good teachings.
So the third question is, whose needs? Is this more for the parent than the child? If you can put your ideas up for number 3. Seems it may be more for the parent, a tantrum or a headache avoidance. Depends on the parent, because I may feel embarrassed if it is dirty. The child may feel safe and secure in her favorite shirt. Just a phase. She won't wear this shirt for the rest of her life.
Absolutely.
Right.
And it may be just not to put the stress on that. There are other stresses in the family that are more important right now.
Mm-hmm. So our last question is possible harm. Does it harm others or property or the environment or the community? So if you could put a few answers up to that last question.
We're getting no, it's not
Lots of
harmful.
no's. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. No, unless it starts a habit of the child always getting their way. And of course that would go back to developmental needs.
Mm-hmm. And the use of water, someone has pointed out.
Oh yeah.
If we're washing it too much,
Yeah.
could be that overuse of resources.
If the conflict takes the parents' attention away from the other children, what about the other kids in the family?
Mm-hmm.
These are really nice.
They're great. So this is really, this test of 4 is just a fabulous tool to walk through with these different situations, to really think through as a parent. Another tool is called the Developmental Parenting Highway, which helps a parent to see where overindulgence fits with their style of parenting. So if a parent looking at this map can really stay on the middle part of the road, it can help them to avoid or come back from overindulging situations. The course provides both this visual map with audio explanations of each of the sections on the top and the bottom of the road, and it also includes a downloadable fact sheet with much more detailed information on how to use the developmental highway as a parenting tool. Suggestion circles are a great way to gain some tried and true parenting solutions, which is often another parent's best wisdom. I know I ask my friends oftentimes what to do with parenting situations, and it's really important as a parent to be able to try out several ideas when you are trying to avoid overindulgence and not just try one situation and think, oh, it doesn't work, so we're going to continue on. With a suggestion circle, you can ask a group of about 6 people for their most helpful idea for solving your problem. Do not let others then expand on the idea of someone else. It's important to just simply say thank you after someone has offered an idea. You can do a suggestion circle in many different ways. You can do it with a group of your friends. At a fairly quiet time, ask people if they're willing to help you through a situation by doing a circle. You can do them on a phone or a video chat. Invite 6 friends or some family members to connect with. You can also think about doing them through email, Facebook, on a discussion board. Find 6 friends to connect with through these methods. Also with your family, if your family is small, maybe at a meal time together, you can go around the table a couple of times. It is important, though, to remember that you as the parent will make the final decision on how to approach the situation. Also at work or within the community, ask 6 service people or co-workers. Oftentimes these are great circles to gain information. This part in this tool is part of the in-person parenting classes on overindulgence and will be included in our next online course.
Great.
The suggestion circles.
Great. One of the wonderful things about the circle is many times if I've done 2 things, I think I've done everything. And hearing 6 things or going around twice and hearing 12 will help me get off my stuck spot. So I may do something that wasn't even presented in the circle, but I wouldn't have thought of without having it.
Right. And lastly, there are some video clips that provide different scenarios to think through, just as we went through with the test of 4. There's a picky eater, picky dresser, a picky spender that are all based on different ages. There are fact sheets that are downloadable that also expand and include all ages of these scenarios that are printable. So what we would like to do at this time is go back to the poll that we started with and have you think through that question again. In your experience, does overindulgence come up seldom, frequently, or sometimes? I see a change here, Jean.
Yeah, what do you see, Ellie?
I see we have doubled the frequent responses,
Yeah.
and the sometimes have been cut in half. The seldom stayed about the same.
Well, this is not surprising to me because of all the surprises that we had in the research. I think the one that struck me the most was this doing too much for kids. I thought if you loved your kids, you couldn't do too much for them. And I had no idea about how debilitating it was. And so this is very interesting, and I am just impressed with people's attention and appreciate everybody being with us.
Absolutely.
So much.
Absolutely. Are there any other questions before we end our session today? So please contact Jean and I. Oh, I'm sorry. The 3 forms of overindulgence. Absolutely.
Oh, Ellie.
What?
Thank you for catching that.
I don't want to get them wrong.
Reviewing that again.
All right. We have soft structure, over-nurturing, and too much. Too much is too much of the stuff. Over-nurturing is doing things for the child that they should be learning or can already do. And soft structure is all about rules and either not having them or shielding them.
One of the questions is, can you suggest a good parenting book? How much is enough has been translated into 9 languages, none of them in Europe. Places like Saudi Arabia, China, Portugal. How much is too much is about overindulgence, but it's also filled with good, sound parenting suggestions.
And we had the picture of how much is too much up on the slide.
Yeah.
And that is readily available. And this course is available if you go to the second website listed. No, maybe it's a first. It's under Ellie McCann, the extension.umn.edu family. You can find the 1-hour overindulgence course there. And it is also on the overindulgence.info website as well.
Is this class available? Yes.
Do we come to speak to groups locally? Possibly. Please reach out to us. Our web or our email addresses are listed on the slide.
Another place to read about it is on the Overindulgence website, which is overindulgence.info. If you want information about overindulgence, you can go to overindulgence.info.
And that is also available on Facebook.
Okay.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate your participation.
Oh, we do.
Well, thank you so much, Ellie and Jean. What a great webinar. And their contact information is listed here, so please feel free to reach out to them. We have just a couple of housekeeping things, and our next webinar coming up is on Thursday, March 12th at noon Central Time, entitled Navigating the Mid-Career Years, How to Grow and Advance Your Job. We also have coming up our next interest-based webinar is Pet Wellness, Components of a Comprehensive Lifetime Pet Care Plan on April 10th. You can sign up for these and any other upcoming webinars at minnesotaalumni.org/alumni webinar series. This is also where all the recorded versions of the webinars that we've done are listed as well. If you're on social media, be sure to connect with the University of Minnesota Alumni Association on Twitter, LinkedIn, or visit our home webpage to see all of our different channels. In closing, members of the University of Minnesota make new initiatives like this webinar series possible. Thank you. Because of members, we can enrich the lives of alumni, support student success, and make a better University of Minnesota. Become a member today at minnesotaalumni.org/join. This is the conclusion of today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us and being an active member of the worldwide community of University of Minnesota alumni and friends. Have a wonderful day, and Skye Ma.